This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Emerging Tech series of the Leadership and Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Savage, and today I am very lucky to be joined by Casey, who is the VP of Engineering from Flume Health. Casey, welcome.
Thanks. I'm excited to join you today, Gavin.
No, thank you. We had the pleasure of meeting over the Christmas period in New York, where I got lost and a little bit late to our meeting going downtown. But, first time in New York, so I cut me some slack.
Oh, absolutely. It's a bit of a rite of passage. I always enjoy trying to help tourists get somewhere. And unfortunately, I oftentimes find that depending on what the trains are doing that day, I end up giving them bad directions too. Totally understand.
Well, I never told you, but on the way back from our coffee date, it took me about an hour and a half to get back to Times Square.
Wow. What happened?
Just for an underground that is effectively, in theory, simpler than the underground in London, which is where I'm typically based. I don't know. I just got confused. I got off twice at two wrong stops, and yeah, Alex, who I was over with from FinPro, was, he must have been thinking, where the hell is he? But we made it back. But yes, it's unusual that I get to meet in person in the era of remote work, and considering I'm in the UK and most of the podcasts and recruitment work I do is in the US. So as I say, it's a pleasure to have you on. Before we get into everything that we're going to discuss, always a nice place to start. Why don't you could you kindly, kind of introduce yourself, a bit about your background as a whole, and how you ended navigating into the world of kind of health insurance, insurtech with Flume Health.
Yeah, so I'm Casey Hancock. I'm the SVP of engineering at Flume, but small startups titles are whatever they need to be that day. So I ultimately I got into technology. I mean, as a kid, I was really interested in machines. And through high school and college, I started to get my hands dirty on more technical projects, building some web apps. In college, I actually was kind of known for having built this financial processing app for our student government. We processed a lot of transactions for the different organizations. And so there were a couple of folks at Faster who knew me through that, and they were very excited by the release of the Oculus DK1, the first VR sort of prototype headset that was out there. And they approached me interested in ultimately building a distribution platform and content creation platform for virtual reality. And that is where Evo came from. So my first foray into startups. We ended up building a platform to author and deliver live capture VR. So think video captured VR with the ability to jump between scenes based on what you're looking at, or the ability to trigger audio based on where you're looking. So maybe if I look in one direction, a bird might fly at me. You might hear the audio of that as well. We worked on some very cool projects. We ended up having projects with the BBC, Merck, Logitech, Zoom as examples. In fact, I think I was looking during the sort of lockdowns of the pandemic, still through late 2020, Zoom had our interactive player embedded on their hardware marketing site. So very cool opportunity, fun technology to build in VR, especially because we got to build technology that's it could run on an iPhone, it could run on a headset, or it could run in the browser. Very, very cool, very cutting edge. Ultimately, though, I ended up meeting Cedric, Flume's founder, at a networking event, started talking about the problems that he was seeing in healthcare and what he was trying to build to make healthcare better, and ultimately took the leap to go start the technical team here at Flume. So I kind of unexpectedly found myself in healthcare, mostly just through being interested in solving the problems that I was hearing about and being intrigued by the mission and vision that he laid out.
Hmm. Awesome. And for the listeners, could you give a brief description of the mission and that vision at Flume Health, which attracted you over to them?
Yeah, try to keep it brief. We've had a fun story so far. So Flume was really founded after Cedric had this sort of key recognition that your health plan is probably the most influential player in your healthcare journey in the U.S. at least. So obviously, doctors identify and drive care as you need it. They know what you need, and they're telling you what steps to take. But ultimately, that system, which sort of says really like who will get paid what and what will be paid for, that's your health insurer. And if they won't pay for it, then those things won't happen. If you have to do it out of pocket, you're probably not going to pursue that path of care. So there was just this recognition that healthcare as it is right now is incredibly influential in your journey. But health plans really today, or at least back then, and we've seen some progress over the last couple of years, it's not really very personalized for the individual and doesn't necessarily work well for all kinds of individuals. So we actually started out administering self-insured health plans. So these typically were businesses that were looking to control their costs and provide a health plan that was tailored for their population. So a health plan that offered care specifically designed to make it easy for their population to be healthy. So this might include things like having a direct primary care offering as a part of the health plan, or a contract with a local health system. So you're trying to make sure that your members have good access to care and are incentivized to use that within the confines of the health plan, while you're also trying to control costs in what is one of really the most expensive place to get care. So we built this administrative product. We started operating health plans. We operated health plans primarily for employers. We recognized that there's an opportunity to start to power health plans with the technology that we built and the administrative capabilities that we built to offer those services to those who themselves might have unique offerings. So I think a really good example of this is Firefly Health. So they have a virtual primary care business and capability that they could now pair with a health plan, where a doctor would actually be able to say, you have this particular condition, and if you go to this provider, which I know is a good specialist to solve this problem for you, then I can ensure that you don't have any out-of-pocket costs, because I'm directing the health plan to do something that fits within both my advice as a professional doctor, as well as the care model designed in the health plan. So we started offering our technology for those kinds of businesses, and we had pretty fantastic traction. We recognize that in that administrative business, there's, I think, something like we charted out, there's like 37 different key functional areas that we're responsible for, and ultimately that we thought we could build individual technology on, we could focus and build something innovative or useful in that space. So we had a lot of ground to cover. We knew that. And we'd recognize that our business had come to a place where we were actually spending the vast majority of our engineering and product time on integrations. So health plans, interestingly enough, are very, very data hungry. They send and receive a lot of data, and that is essential to the health plan's operation. So we built a lot of technology to support that. Ultimately, with the traction that we'd received, we actually built a product designed to make that whole process, the integration process and operation of integrations, faster and cheaper. And that sort of birthed or set the foundations for today, what is Flume Relay, the product that we're selling in the marketplace, which is a purpose-built data integration and trading tool that is really meant to be that sort of trading infrastructure that powers your health plan operation. So it can help power trading in health plans. It can also help power trading for, say, healthcare point solutions, or a broad spectrum of folks in between. Basically, if you're trading healthcare data, we can, on the payer side, provide you a tool that does that a lot more efficiently. And based on the library of integrations that we have, oftentimes we find that we might already be connected to who you want to trade with. So your integration will be very fast and fully managed for you. So quite a bit of a journey, but ultimately we ended up in this key focus on how we could make the infrastructure of healthcare more flexible to enable this sort of philosophy that we have about how health plans over time, with the introduction of more novel like digital therapeutics and other solutions in the space, will become more personalized individuals, but you kind of need core infrastructure there to enable that to occur.
Hmm. It's super interesting. It's kind of like a B2B to C play then, because you're obviously working with the large health players and health insurers, but ultimately it's benefiting the consumer at on the front end of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of fun because you decide how many B2s you want to add in there, depending on who you're selling to. But
Yeah.
that's something we pretty commonly see, and particularly as we were an administrator in the space.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what was, as coming in as the SVP for you, what was the most kind of critical thing? Like, because it's that kind of common misconception that technology will just solve everything, but it's really the users that will help you get to where you need to go in terms of what you have to build. Like, coming from a SaaS orientated world at Evo, what was the kind of biggest implicate when you look back, what was the biggest implications of what you guys built? Was it the technology, or was it how did you go about finding out how to close that gap in terms of the lack of personalization, or I know there's a number of complexities when it comes to health cover and health plans in the US, but looking back, like what do you feel like it was that maybe surprised you the most, or maybe not surprised you the most, but looking back, what was it that you really got right?
What was it that we got right? Yeah. So I think the answer at the end of the day is probably focus. I think I was kind of taken a little by surprise by the complexity of operating a health plan. I think from the outside, particularly coming from like a world in which I'm working with streaming technology for
Mm.
video that has more complexity than what your standard tooling is able to support. I thought that I had a sense of what complex technology could look like. I mean, healthcare, we're just like pushing around paper, right? A lot of forms, a lot of documents. It's just shockingly more complex to operate a health plan than that. So like we built our own plan administrative stack from scratch. And we did it with what we could find in the market and what we could build that was pretty fairly modern for what it was, and flexible. And even within that, we're dealing with arrays of different kinds of issues that stemmed from just like the variability of different kinds of health plans that you're operating, particularly when you're selling the ability to operate customized health plans. So I think it's ultimately this the thing that we got right is seeing the areas where we could provide unique innovation and then driving deeper on that innovation, and offering that as a product. There are many different things that I know Flume is going to do over the course of its life as a company, and I think we want to expand into some of those other 37. But like
Mm.
functional areas, we want to continue doing that sort of platform work. But as it is today, that focus, I think, has been very essential in us being effective at delivering an innovative product in a space that is pretty wildly complex.
Mm. Interesting. And I guess moving into the more insured part of it, the insurance carriers that are, health plans, there's a lot to consider nowadays, health, dental, life. But it seems like more and more these days, the adoption of APIs and low no code solutions and technology infrastructures to support fast, accurate data exchanges are really there's a lot of investment going into that. Like one thing that kind of stood out from the offering at from Flume Health is that phrase health plan as a service platform. Like how do you define HaaS? What unique offering does this have on the health sector that was not there before?
Yeah. So health plan as a service, very fun term.
Hmm.
Ultimately, I look at it as a model where health plan administration or operation is offered as a really fully managed service through a technology platform. So this sort of encapsulates this image of utilizing more modern tooling and technological practices to deliver those administrative services that can power expanding, evolving modern health plans. In this case, it also meant that there was like a certain amount of technology that we could leverage in order to operate distinctly novel models, because we were interested in utilizing technology to innovate in the space. I think in terms of what it offers to the sector, like our end goal and where we saw a lot of traction was, we actually use this term, anybody could operate a health plan. Not that anybody should operate a health plan, for what it's worth, but anybody who had a novel care model or had an ability to provide a better service for a member, they shouldn't be burdened by that sort of overhead of starting the administrative service. They should be able to go to a partner and operate that plan. They should have technology available that they can sort of use in their stack to build a health plan. So I think that's ultimately how we've seen it, and really how we see as sort of being that like infrastructural layer now in the health plan as a service sort of platform, in providing that data trading, which is sort of like the foundation of your technological operation inside of the health plan administrative stack.
And in what way does your kind of administrative platform? Because we kind of went back and forth on this when our meeting in New York, and I was really trying to get to the core of the insurance part of it. You know, how that really benefits the health insurers, or and presumably it's in tandem with large health organizations and also large carriers that offer life and health plans. Like, what kind of role do you feel like you've played in the, it's interesting because in the UK I don't have health insurance because I have the NHS. So something happens to
I'm
me.
happy for you, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a humble brag. It didn't. I think that sounded like that, but like in terms of not being fit for purpose, you touched on it there. Key personalization. I'm assuming cost is a massive thing, and you've provided a single integration platform to benefit the end user or the consumer. Like from an insurance perspective, how is that really changed the game in somewhat way for them in terms of what they can offer from an insurance perspective?
Yeah. That's a good plan. Or good question. Talking about health plans. I think it's to recognize where we are now, and to recognize like how like what I might consider if I'm thinking of myself as an outsider to insurance, is like pretty modest movements in technology in some senses. I think it's useful to sort of understand the history of how we got here, to a good degree. So like healthcare payments in the US, they've evolved a lot. In the sort of like 50s or 60s or so, we started having this emergence of like payment for healthcare, or a part of your healthcare being available through your employer, being an additional offering that they could provide to you as a benefit. That eventually evolved into what we have today. I don't think it was like intended to be health insurance as it is today, but it evolved to what we have today, where you've got a really complex web of relationships, where your consumer of healthcare is really a number of steps removed from the person paying for the healthcare, who's also removed from the decision making of what healthcare is being paid for. So like you've got a member, their employer typically, or in some cases, depending on what kind of health plan you're in, maybe the government is responsible for paying for your healthcare. But if it's your employers paying for it, they are often working with an insurance company, and it's even more complex than this. And we found that as an operator of self-funded plans. But like typically a health insurance company is making the decisions about what is being paid for, and they're just charging premiums back to the employer. So the employer doesn't know how their money is necessarily helping their population, other than asking them. And maybe to some degree looking at the data, which is a little bit more modern. Like health plans haven't traditionally been super excited to share data with most employers unless they have pretty substantial leverage. So we've kind of gotten in this position where like the people paying for healthcare are removed from the people making the decisions about it, which are removed from the consumers, who also, I haven't even talked about it, don't really account for the people who are capable of delivering it. So we've got this like bizarre extended scheme of things, that if you track the full history, it makes sense why regulations got where they got and why health insurance got where it got to. It's very, very difficult to unravel as it is right now. But there are advances that we make over time, progressively, slowly, iteratively. But I think ultimately the way that things are progressing, technology, I think, enables and really like these kinds of solutions. So the solution that Flume brings, or maybe even like the solution of Firefly operating on Flume technology as an example, gives us a picture of how technology kind of advances this marketplace, even with a lot of its complexities. So like in the Firefly case, because they have the ability to offer, like because administration is available to them as an off the shelf service that they can buy, and that administration has the ability to connect a bunch of different kinds of data sources and make that data available to their care teams, their providers in real time. They're able to offer a health plan where really like the doctor is the most influential. The doctor and patient collaboratively are the most influential in how the care is delivered for that individual. So there are just new kinds of models that are made available because we've now got telemedicine as an option, and we have the technological capabilities and movement within the industry to connect all of those disparate data sources, those disparate offerings, and enable like plans with incentive structures that work best for patients, that are really designed to allow them to get that sort of personalized care journey where hopefully at the end of the day, they become healthy or they stay healthy and they haven't had to really spend anything out of pocket. And the overall plan spend for their employer is hopefully less because they've gotten to stay healthy, and the health plan was actually able to sort of customize its care to that individual, recognizing the sort of needs that that individual has.
I mean, it's so bound by data, and there's so many different parts of the value chain, as you say. There's all these disparate systems trying to talk to each other. You know, for you and the team at Flume, like what's been the biggest challenges when you're trying to innovate for that efficiency, transparency, and connectivity of data? Like, what have been the biggest challenges over the last couple of years, and in terms of yeah, in terms of just general innovation in that space?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges for us have probably just been the variation in the kinds of problems that we need to solve in different areas, and I think particularly in data trading when we're looking at part of the reason why Relay as a product is interesting. We're not actually doing anything like crazy novel over what's out there. I mean, we obviously use cutting edge technology. We're doing things well for healthcare, and we're integrated with a bunch of different healthcare players. But like, there are tools out there like MuleSoft or Fivetran or other integration tools out there. I think what we end up, I guess. Actually, can you focus the question for me one more time really quickly?
Yeah, just in terms of, the biggest challenges when you are, as I say, you talked about the chain of communication between health insurance and a number of other parties, like when you're trying to innovate and bring that exchange of data together through your administrative platform, like what have been the
Right.
biggest challenges for you when doing that?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that variation in what we're seeing. So, in terms of the difficulty that we're solving, particularly in data trading, that has been to answer that challenge in variation of
Mm.
things that you would expect to be very simple or standard. That's uniquely difficult in healthcare. So, like data trading technology is you can get it from AWS, you can get it from a Salesforce product, you can get it from a Microsoft product. But the difficulty is in healthcare managing all of the variation and complexity that really the industry as a whole shouldn't have to. Like every corporation, there isn't any reason that everybody should have to go invest in integrating with all of the other people, because if they invested in integrating with one system capable of communicating with all of those other systems, then they themselves would sort of reap the benefits of that, and it's really not core to their business. So I think it's sort of like we found our biggest challenge being sort of that like variation in connecting all of the disparate systems, the disparate sources and destinations, and entities, and ultimately came out with like the product that we wanted to deliver, was one that was able to sort of solve that challenge of handling variation across the industry in data integration.
Mm. And then kind of jumping on the kind of AI bandwagon topic, we're seeing that, I read a lot and see a lot that AI will, really change the way that we do everything, when we apply that to a product, we look at when we apply that to a product, the most significant technologies like, as I say, AI, Internet of Things, like what do you think the most significant ways that, for example, AI will change? Maybe not as broad as product development, but product development in the health space for you. Like that's just more of a fun question as to your maybe something that you can see happening in the future or where AI can take the health insurance space or the health space.
Yeah, AI is very exciting for the health space. I think already we know that very large corporations are using AI in different kinds of ways to help make health plans better, to make them cheaper to operate. In some cases, they're doing a good job of that. In some cases, I think they're maybe missing the mark a little bit at times. But there are a ton of different kinds of applications, and they happen at various levels of I don't know, like depth inside of the I don't know, the bowels of healthcare. So for example, there are a number of innovative products that I've seen come out that help to make administration more streamlined, simpler, more straightforward, and sort of actually like surface the important things to an administrator that is actually key to operating the health plan. While sort of decreasing friction for members. There's certainly AI being deployed to identify risk models for distinct populations, which can be utilized in, say, for example, like reinsurance situations, where you're trying to provide a better model for risk for a particular population, potentially with less data. So there are just a broad swath of areas that already AI is provided advancement. I think that the sort of like saturation of AI, we've just seen it sort of start to trickle in. I think that we're going to see a lot of that continue to get quite a bit deeper over time, and I'm excited to see how it's employed in many different kinds of areas. I mean, I think just even for Flume in the area that we're focused, it's very simple for us to look at AI and see tons of applications. Obviously, like we're looking to map between disparate data sources. We can use AI to kind of do a first cut of that for us, and we can also use AI to detect when there are say anomalies in what's being traded between our partners, so we can identify if there are issues in our integrations. And those are sort of just, I think, some like first level examples that we've considered. So I guess I'm incredibly excited. It's like I don't even know which part I want to go like dig into first as to how I think AI will help that space. But I think it's an incredibly powerful and valuable tool for the space. And I think it's, from what I've seen, it's been sort of like there's a lot of excitement and acceptance of it. I think insurance is typically pretty like, I mean, by the nature of what it is, it's pretty risk averse. But I've seen a lot of folks be very engaged with and sort of accepting of wrapping their arms around AI in a way that other technologies they might be a little bit more resistant to.
I think from an insurance perspective, it's not been able to control sometimes the outcome of what the AI could do, and it may be getting a bit out of control. Like, one thing you kind of mentioned there about you and the team are thinking about AI. One thing I hear or see a lot when I'm having conversations that like when the discussion of AI is ongoing, it almost just gets passed to engineering, and then the engineering team just decide what we're going to do with it. Like, do you feel like that's potentially a wrong play? Like for me, I kind of feel like the AI strategy has to start from the top, CEO, executive team and work its way down. Like so at the moment, it seems like it's like AI, that's engineering's problem. Let us know what you think we should do. Like, do you know what I mean there? Like, what's your guys' kind of
Yeah,
strategy with it?
yeah. So my view on that is that kind of is, it kind of depends on what kind of like product engineering culture you have, like kind of
Mm,
broadly at your company. I do think it's incredibly common for at least healthcare companies, probably insurance companies, pretty broadly to look at technology in the organization as sort of like a pretty operational function. So it's sort of like you've got a factory over there and you can produce widgets for me. Here are some widgets that I would like. And they've heard about AI potentially in marketing or through discussions at the dinner table or conferences, what have you. And so they might be excited about it, but leaders in organizations who don't necessarily embrace an understanding of what the technology can do can sometimes just get stuck in a little bit of a place where they end up saying, well, I kind of know about this thing. Let me throw that over the fence to you and you guys can go run with it. So I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the culture that we have is ultimately like we are very product and engineering sort of like pervasively our culture exists at all levels. And so like our founder and CEO is the one that you'll find like trying to toy around with the chat GPT API. So depending on kind of how your company is set up, what your culture looks like, I think it's very common for that to occur. But as you have leaders in your organization who understand that technology deeply and can share with other leaders in the organization how that technology operates, it's not that hard for people to start to see how they can break down the problem and identify areas that they can provide a little bit more of their own expertise and apply that into something like AI, which does kind of require you to understand what, like at this stage, especially, like you do need to control for what those outputs are going to be, which means that you kind of need to granularly understand what kind of problem space you're attempting to solve. And the knowledge of what kinds of problems can be solved certainly exists very broadly outside of just your engineering organization. So I think it's a lot of really the culture of your organization and the way in which they look at technology and the way in which they look at their individual's responsibility for understanding technology and to some degree how the technologists in the organization sort of evangelize what is out there and provide knowledge and support an open culture of curiosity for others to be able to engage with new technologies or understand the power of it and how they might be able to contribute to that vision or drive towards utilizing it in their businesses.
It's interesting because I was listening to a podcast and it was the co-founder CTO of Spotify, and he made a good point. Like when we transition to mobile, the UI or functional, when you're building your platform at Flume, it's about functionality, it's about the UI being easy to use and easy to understand. That has always been the product. Then machine learning came along to help the UI, and now AI, it would seem, is fast becoming the product, and UI is here to help AI. Like, do you think that at some point will even you at Flume you'll move towards in the world will generally move towards AI making UI redundant?
Yes and no, I suppose. I mean, I think we've got. I'm usually very. I don't know how to put it. Maybe I'm pessimistic, and so I sometimes these like very like fantastical views of like the world in which I've got like AI in my ear and it can interpret the whole world around me and it just knows everything and it can handle everything for me and it makes good decisions for me. That
Yeah.
sounds really exciting and awesome, and I'm not opposed to that future, as long as that future doesn't kill us. But I think that there's going to be a little bit of a journey to get there, and I think I don't know. It's almost like I think there'll be progress over time. There will be certain tools that are just more useful to us in certain forms. So
Yeah.
like we are as humans, we're very we have all of our senses, right? So we are very visual as well. So I think like we've got mobile phones, and I think that there's then over time a sort of thought that like mobile phones could like wholly replace, or even like tablets could wholly replace our desktop computers. But every day at work, we're very happy to work with the keyboard, the mouse, and the monitor that we have, because these are the tools that are very comfortable for us to work with. So I think like to a certain degree, AI is probably going to simplify a lot of user interfaces for us, and I think it's going to make our lives especially for the mundane stuff, substantially simpler and more enjoyable. But I don't think it'll like wholly displace all of UI that is out there. But it probably for a lot of your like mundane interactions probably will make it a lot simpler for you to do those kinds of things. And then to really get you to the core of what actual value you're adding or deriving from that particular situation. So I don't know, that's a bit of yes and no kind of answer, I suppose. Like UI is here to stay, at least for a while. But
Yeah.
AI will make that a lot better.
It's a broad question, like, and it's not, it's more interesting your thoughts because your platform is so based on that, user interaction and functionality and simplicity. And then AI, of course, can really kind of fast track that. But, I'm conscious of your time. Just as a kind of finish point, we touched upon something in terms of scaling engineering teams. Looking to build an engineering team at scale when you're going through rapid growth rates. And for me, it seemed like your compassion and empathy to how to hire within engineering and how to grow that team in a sustainable fashion, it really quite spoke to me because I done a recording earlier with Alex, who hosts on the original series of this podcast, and we spoke about the 2023 era of hiring, and particularly in our world, my world as an engineering and product recruiter. um, the stages from basically the concentration on capital we feel has had as a direct result on the ability to hire people, but rather than it increases that bar. So hesitant to make decisions, increasing stages to 5, 6, 7 stage interviews, having 3 technical tests and amongst those interviews and making it all very binary. And I think as a result, losing out on talent. Like as we go into 2024 with a very different mindset in how we're going to grow engineering teams, not growth at all costs. Like, what do you think the key consideration should be when looking to build an engineering team at scale? Like, what do you think we're not talking about or not quite doing right and should be doing better in that area?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. I think my I really like my one word answers here. I think like simplicity probably needs to be a bit about a core of your focus. Like, what are we actually trying to solve for? Particularly as we talked about like that process of acquiring an engineer, the steps of
Mm,
interviews, just kind of expanding. What are you actually getting out of your process? What are you actually evaluating at each stage of the process? So I think that's something where like we kind of talked a little bit about the nature of technical interviews
yeah.
and how they can be incredibly like I've certainly been aware of many organizations who look at these things as like very much so just like a binary test. There's like a yes or no answer. And our sort of philosophy here is that like the you are looking to get a particular signal out of that step. You do need to do that to be prudent in understanding what technical level that engineer is at, but that is not your whole view of that engineer. And like they're like the way that we look at it is there's not really like necessarily pass or fail wholly. It's more that when you take our technical interview, we're looking to see through a set of progressively harder technical problems that you are doing in an open and comfortable environment. Hopefully, I know it's high pressure and really uncomfortable really as a
Mm,
whole, but we've thought of different ways to doing it, and this is sort of where we've landed. But if you're in an environment where you've got whatever resources you'd have normally available, so you've got all the documentation, you've got Google, you've got Chat GPT if you want it, but you are meant to move through a progressively harder set of questions. We can see how you think about those questions, and we can see what level of technical familiarity you have with certain kinds of concepts. And if we have enough questions set up over the course of, say, an hour, we can see how far you get into that interview, and we can identify particular traits related to your competencies there. So we might identify that you are particularly fast, but maybe your algorithmic solutions are not the most optimal for the role that we're hiring for. That might be very good. Like that may be fine. We're not
mm,
necessarily looking for you to do anything like wildly algorithmically complex, or maybe that's
yeah.
very important for us. So the way that we look at it is very much so like when you're taking any particular step, what are you trying to solve for? And ultimately, you're like it's both the candidate's time, but it's also your time. It's very expensive to
Mm,
have engineers interviewing engineers, or to have other higher level folks at your company interviewing other people. So really, I think the key is to focus on how you can kind of like MVP your hiring process if possible. Get just what you need to actually have the right conclusion in your hiring process, and know what you're optimizing for at each of those steps. I think that's I guess my like first cut. I don't know if there's any particular other direction you want to go on that.
No, I think that just brings us perfectly to the end, and a great finishing point on how to hire, and I guess just as I say, not to make it so binary, and really focus on the all-rounded skills of the individual. Of course, we have to test for technical ability, but as I say, I think going into 2024, simplicity is key, and treating the engineering process and humanizing it more is what I would personally love to see. But yeah, Casey, thank you for joining me today, and yeah, it's been great to have you on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been fun, Gavin.
Thank you.